Okay, get this. What if I told you that there's a single teaching method, one that's been researched to death, that can take a classroom success rate from a pretty dismal 28% all the way up to 72%? I mean, it literally accounts for almost all of the positive impact a school can possibly have. So that leads to a huge question. Why on earth isn't every single teacher using it? Well, welcome back to Simplified Teaching, where we demystify pedagogy. Today, we are diving deep into the peer-reviewed evidence to finally get to the bottom of it. So here's the game plan. First, we're going to build the incredibly strong, data-driven case for this one specific method. Then we'll see why it's not quite so simple by exploring the huge academic debate that really complicates things. After that, we're bringing a third, experience-focused approach, and then we're going to throw them all into what we're calling the data war to see what shakes out. Once the dust settles, we'll nail down the core takeaway and give you some concrete action points you can actually use. All right, let's kick things off with a 2021 study by Lee Mason and Maria Otero. And you need to know, this isn't just another study. It's a really powerful reinterpretation of a half-century of research. And honestly, it makes an almost unbelievably strong case for a very specific and very controlled way of teaching. The method right at the heart of their analysis is called direct instruction, or DI. And, as the authors point out, it's one of the most polarizing topics in all of education. It seems like you either love it or you hate it. And that is exactly why we need to push past all the opinions and the philosophy and just look at what the numbers actually say. And just look at this mountain of data. DI is arguably the most researched educational model in history. But the individual results are kind of all over the place. Some studies show a truly gigantic effect, like that 2.44 for science. I mean, wow. But then others, like one from 1981, actually show a negative effect. But here's the kicker. Look at the simple mean. When you average out 39 representative studies, you get an effect size of 0.79. In educational research, that is considered very, very large. So, an effect size of 0.79 is large, but what does that actually mean for a student sitting in a classroom? You know, these abstract stats can be tough to wrap your head around. And that's where Mason and Otero use this brilliant little tool called the binomial effect size display, or BESD. Its whole job is to translate these complex numbers into a simple, real-world success rate that anyone can instantly understand. And this just shows the power of that translation perfectly. When you run that big average effect size through the BESD, the result is absolutely staggering. So in the control groups using other teaching methods, the student success rate was hanging around 28%. But look at this jump. In classrooms using direct instruction, that success rate just skyrockets to nearly 72%. That's not a small adjustment. That is a massive, game-changing improvement in what actually happens for kids. So let's just recap this first source real quick. We've got Mason and Otero in 2021, and their core finding is that DI can basically double student success rates. It's so powerful it accounts for nearly all the positive impact a school can make. Their method was a reinterpretation of older work, which is a limitation, sure, but it's also what makes it so powerful. For its impact on how we think about teaching, we gotta give it a clear 5 out of 5. Okay, so based on that, this should be an open and shut case, right? Just use direct instruction and profit. Well, a 2024 article by Jill Barchet, which summarizes a pretty fierce academic debate, shows us why it is not nearly that simple. Let's dig into our second source. And this gets us to the absolute core question of this whole breakdown. With data that powerful, why is there any debate at all? Why isn't every single school, every district, every teacher training program on the planet built around direct instruction? The answer? Well, it lies in a really fundamental disagreement about what the whole point of teaching even is. Barchet's article really highlights this long-standing philosophical war between two camps. On one side, you've got direct instruction, where the teacher explicitly explains everything first, and on the other side, you have inquiry-based learning, where students are asked to explore and discover the concepts for themselves, kind of like a little scientist. They're just fundamentally different ways of getting to the same goal of, well, learning. But here is where it gets super interesting. A consensus is actually starting to emerge from this big debate. So how can two groups look at the same research and come to totally opposite conclusions? It's because they were asking different questions. Critics of inquiry said it wasn't great for learning basic facts and skills. Defenders of inquiry argued that it was way better for developing a deep conceptual understanding. So the crucial point here is, it's not about which method is best. It's about which method is best for a specific goal. So, wrapping up source number 2, Barchet's 2024 summary shows that the best method depends entirely on your goal. Foundational knowledge, DI is your champ. Deep conceptual understanding, guided inquiry takes the prize. Now, it is a journalistic summary, so it simplifies things a bit, but still, its impact is a solid 4 out of 5 because it just shatters the myth that there's one single best way to teach. And the plot thickens. We've seen the case for control, we've seen the debate over discovery. Now, our third and most recent source, a 2025 systematic literature review, adds a whole new dimension to this conversation by bringing a third major player into the ring. And this player is experiential learning, or EL. This isn't just about discovery, it's a much broader model that's all about learning by doing. The core idea is that students develop skills not just by being told something or by figuring it out, but through direct hands-on experience that is then followed by some kind of structured reflection. And what the research on EL shows is that its benefits are incredibly wide-ranging. This 2025 review by Shafriani and her colleagues found that EL has a significant positive impact on a whole host of different outcomes. I mean, look at this list. Sure, academic achievement is on there, but look at everything else. Critical thinking, collaboration skills, motivation, problem solving. These are those crucial 21st century skills that go way beyond what a simple standardized test can ever measure. So, our third source, this 2025 literature review, finds that experiential learning is a seriously powerful tool for building those higher order skills. Now, as a literature review, it could be susceptible to something called publication bias. That's the tendency for journals to publish studies with positive results more often than negative ones. But its impact is still a strong 4 out of 5 because it forces us to think bigger about what a successful learning outcome even is. Okay, so now we have our 3 contenders on the field. We've got the heavy-hitting data of direct instruction, we have the conceptual depth of inquiry-based learning, and we have the real-world skills of experiential learning. It is time to put them head-to-head in the data war and see where the research really collides. When we line them all up, the main difference becomes crystal clear. The number one strength of direct instruction is efficiency. It is, flat out, the fastest and most reliable way to build foundational knowledge. The number one strength of inquiry and experiential learning is depth. They are far superior for developing those harder-to-measure skills, like conceptual understanding and critical thinking. They aren't actually disagreeing with each other, they're just prioritizing completely different outcomes. But maybe even more important than their differences is where all of these researchers from all 3 camps find common ground. They all agree that how we teach is a massively powerful lever. They all agree that a random, hey, just go figure it out approach is the absolute least effective strategy. And critically, they all agree that whether it's direct, inquiry, or experiential, the teacher's guidance is the secret sauce for success. And this brings us to the revolution of the data war. You see, the conflict was basically an illusion. The reason these studies seem to contradict each other is because of what we call a methodological gap. They aren't actually measuring the same thing. The DI studies, they focus on academic achievement tests. The inquiry studies, they measure conceptual understanding. The EL studies, they're looking at skills like collaboration. It's the classic parable. They're each giving us a perfect details report on a different part of the exact same elephant. So, after exploring the control, the discovery, and the experience, and after finally calling a truce in the data war, what is the single most important takeaway from all of this? What does it all mean for you as an educator on the ground? Well, it all comes down to this simple idea. Stop searching for the single best instructional strategy. It doesn't exist. The real goal is to start building your professional toolkit. See, the master educator isn't someone who uses one method perfectly. It's someone who knows exactly which tool to pull out for which job. Let's break that down into 3 simple rules. 1, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. The right strategy is always dictated by your learning goal. 2, explicit direct instruction is your non-negotiable foundation. When students are new to a topic, this is the most effective way to give them the basics. And 3, active guided learning, things like inquiry or experiential models, that's how you build on top of that foundation to develop those critical higher order skills. Okay, so that's the theory, but what does this actually look like in practice? Let's translate these big ideas into concrete, actionable steps that you can use in your very next lesson plan. Here is your new 3-step protocol. Step 1, audit your objective. Ask yourself, right now, am I trying to build new knowledge or am I trying to deepen understanding? Step 2, always start with direct. Give them the foundational tools they need to get started. Don't leave them guessing. And step 3, immediately graduate to guided application. Get them to pick up those tools you just gave them and actually use them to solve a problem or create something new. Ultimately, what all of this research really shows us is that this whole debate was never a conflict that one side needed to win. It's a spectrum that all of us need to master. Hey, if you want to keep getting these research-driven breakdowns delivered right to you, make sure you like this explainer and hit subscribe to Simplified Teaching. Our next analysis drops next week, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. We'll see you then.